friends, and this is another episode of Eternal Energies, or Universal Energies if you like. But it's the way of giving you the tools so you can understand and make your own choices in life. Sometimes we go along and we are controlled and dictated to which avenue we go down, and we get to a point whereby we can make our own choices, but sometimes we don't want to rock any boats. So here we are, giving you those choices. My guest today is Mr. David Haskins, and I'm sure you're going to find him very, very interesting. His understanding is of the North gods and the traditions, and those of our ancestors, and all the traditions that went with them. So, without a further ado, let me welcome Mr. David Haskins.
Rob.
And let's kick off then, David, and say, how long have you been understanding in this way, if you like?
The way of the Northern Gods.
The way of the Northern.
Possibly from about 2006, I suppose, 7. It's a slow process. I think it's the journey rather than the destination.
Right. And can you explain just a little about this journey?
Certainly, I grew up in a family with no religious tradition at all. Church was just hatches, matches and dispatches. And my idea of a religious life, if there was one, was dualism. The idea of an equal force of good and equal force of evil. And this did me well up until my sort of 30s, when I read a book called Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And that exploded the myth of dualism for me, for the simple reason that an equal force of good and evil works, but C.S. Lewis made me understand that evil isn't equal to good because it can't create, it can only corrupt. And so with that myth exploded, with the idea of dualism gone from me, I was left a little bit adrift on a sea of not knowing where I stood on anything. And I started to move towards Christianity. And I found myself in a Christian fellowship at Black Tiles Lane in Markham, and a lot of nice people there. And I went through what my wife Sheila calls my brother David period, where I really accepted Christ. I was a born again Christian, about 92 I suppose. She couldn't have an argument with me for 2 years. You know, she'd get up in the morning and I'd be at the bottom of the garden covered in sparrows. But it's just, I got unsettled by the dogma, which I couldn't separate from the message. And so I found myself asking more questions, and the answers I got were unsatisfactory, in that they were saying, well, just believe this. And it doesn't mean to say that I didn't believe the message of Christ, because I still feel the love of Christ around me, even though I'm not a Christian. It's the dogma that goes with it that I objected to.
I agree.
And if I found a stage where I was taught at the fellowship that nothing happens within the fellowship that is not in Scripture, and yet I was constantly being told things that weren't. And it culminated in a day where I was explaining of a friend who was Roman Catholic, who became Elim Pentecostalist in one jump. I mean, I thought Elim Pentecostalist was a Finnish rally driver, but at that time, but now I understand doctrinally it was a massive leap from one end of Christianity to the other, shall we say. And I explained it to this elder who asked me, why I was to believe. And he said, oh, he's saved then. And I said, well, of course he's saved in the love of Christ. He said, no, as a Roman Catholic he's going to burn in hell, but now he's, Elim Pentecostalist and that, he believes in the proper faith and he's therefore saved. And I said to him, well, explain to me where that appears in Scripture. And as he couldn't, I thought, well, I understand people are people and everyone has opinions, but if the church is being run on those opinions, perhaps I ought to find out more about what they were. And then I started studying religion in greater depth, and I found myself in a sea of learning and whatever and studying, and this became formalised.
Is it right, sorry to interrupt you, that you have a degree?
Yes, it started off as I went towards Suffolk Interfaith Resource in Ipswich, which is a good interfaith charity, and I started to go to lectures there. I met Robin Hearn there as one of the lecturers, and also met a man called John Brentnell, who was a great influence on my intellectual learning, as it turned out later in life. I did a certificate course in world religions at Essex University, and John Brentnell was one of the tutors on that. And then as a result of that, I did a diploma course in world religions, or in religion, with the Open University, and it turned out that John Brentnell was my tutor on that as well. And he, a man of powerful intellect, and taught me how to learn. And the more I learnt, the only thing I realised is that I knew nothing, and so the more I learnt, the less I knew. But you just need to struggle to learn. But I needed to know in my own mind why these things were happening to me, and to try and put a meaning to the world. Now I realise that all the belief you have is personal. You can have 50 people in a church. Ostensibly they're all Christians and believe the same thing. But if you asked them individual questions, you'd find 100 questions about Christianity. You'd get 50 different sets of answers, because everybody's belief is their own. And so I believe the journey is greater than the destination. But I found myself, I got the diploma in 2005, I think, and then I thought, well, I'll go on and do the full degree. So I did another sort of 2 years of sort of courses, and got a degree. But it essentially, the thing itself is meaningless for me. It's no use to me. What it did do is open my mind to reading and learning, and for its own sake. And it led me, because of meeting different people on the courses and different things. And as I said, I met Robin, which led me in towards storytelling, and I went to Moots in Ipswich, the Ipswich Pagan Council Moots, and heard speakers there and listened to people. And I found myself drawn towards the northern gods, which is something that I wasn't particularly thrilled with. It wasn't what I set out to do. Just that the more I learnt, the more I felt natural for me. They just felt right. And the more I learnt, the more I agreed. And the more I read, the more I understood. And like all religions, anything you put your mind to,
I agree, quite agree.
Is a layer within a layer within a layer, and you unpeel each one, and with each new understanding, you find a path. But mainly, you find a way of living your own life that you can yourself live with, instead of living a life that you dislike, but you feel you have to conform to.
Or maybe you dictate it. Yes.
Yes. You think this is the normal, I must conform to it, but I believe this thing, or I think that thing, or I understand this, but I mustn't. Or what will people say? Or, how will my life choices go? What will my partner think? What is this happening? Why is this happening? Why can I say this? Well, if you take all of those out of the equation and live your own life and be true to yourself, because in honesty, there isn't a bank of people looking down at you with a clipboard.
Oh, no.
Make your own choices
agree
in life.
with it. I mean, I've known you for quite a while, and you say that flippantly that these things are no good to you, but in actual fact, I've gleaned and understood and followed what you've said and researched what you've said an awful lot. I'm a bit like you, whereby I say one thing but behind closed doors. It's a case of I look and search. I never take anybody, as you know, at face value, and I research them. I do think today that we have more speech, freedom of speech, so therefore that there are religions, for want, that are coming out the door of all kinds of things, but basically, and it's simple, I think, whereby you either have an understanding, a belief of something that may resonate with you, or you don't.
Yes. Years ago I heard the term faith hopper. Derogatory term. It was used pejoratively against a lady that had come to a particular faith, but from another faith, and left that faith to go to another faith, and she was termed derogatively, as a faith hopper. Oh, she's just a faith hopper. And I thought, well, you're telling me that you have a belief and that belief doesn't change? You have one belief and you don't question? Could be worse, could have been mine. And you have a belief that you don't question. Well, if that works, you believe something that your parents tell you at an early age and you change nothing else. You're not questioning for yourself, you're not living your own life, you're living the life that's been dictated to you. If you question and find that that is the right path for you, then everybody's happy. But we can't always do that. And when we find ourselves questioning a pathway, and then we put ourselves on that pathway and learn about it, if that path leads us from one place to another place to another place, then that's where we're intended to be. And in any case, the reason I say to you none of it matters is the fact that it doesn't.
No.
Because there's a way of looking at it that's perhaps easier, which is most of the idea of religion, the reason people find comfort in it is because it gives them a meaning to their life. In other words, I'm just not a random string of self-replicating DNA flowing about in the universe. My life has a purpose. We need that for our self-esteem. But in fact, we are just random strings of DNA floating in the universe.
I appreciate that, yeah.
If we say that also the comfort of belief in an afterlife, i.e. that we go on in some way, whatever way that is a comfort to our lives. And it is, undoubtedly.
It is. Unfortunately, the old traditions have been brought up we've been brought up in fear.
Agree, we have. But that fear is learned, and that can be unlearned.
Of course.
But also, for instance, my father believed that when you pass over, when you go, that's it.
Yeah.
The lights go out.
So do a lot of people now.
And he believes that. Which is good. He might well be right.
Yeah.
But what I look back on and fear is not the fact that he didn't believe in anything in his life. It's the fact that, does it matter? Because I believe there's an afterlife, whatever it is. I'm not quite sure. I'd love to believe that I'm going to the halls of Asgard. I'd love to believe that I'm going to be one of Frey's chosen, and I hope I am. But if we find ourselves, where now we shut our eyes for the final time, just nothing, then I've lost nothing.
That's quite true as well.
But I've gained the knowledge, the love, the fellowship of friends, the fellowship of people, of good company, good sumbul, good good blotar, good meaningful relationships with people in this life, and a journey that I've enjoyed.
Yeah, and I quite
It's a
agree with
win-win
that.
situation.
It is, and I do understand that. All I'm trying to say really is that unfortunately, through the dogma and dictation, which is not, it's only 2,335 years ago that we're talking about, and at the end of the day, everything apart from that has been pushed to one side. Why?
I'm not quite sure. The idea of monotheism is not a new thing. But it's only the monotheistic religions that cause the problems that we have. Now, it's not to say that pagans aren't violent. I think that would be the understatement of the years. In history, everybody is. I think your religion is an adjunct to how people live with each other in neighbouring communities.
It is, and I have to say that throughout history, religion hasn't done us a lot of good.
No, but then very little else has either.
No.
But you can only do that because history doesn't record the comfort that people have in the beliefs that they keep.
That's right.
Monotheistic religions have a problem with polytheistic religions because we have the idea of my God is my God and my God is the only God. There is no God but my God.
Yeah.
If you don't hold that belief, if you hold a pagan viewpoint that, well, there are many gods, then you can accept Christians believing their God. The mere fact it isn't wholly your God It's not your path.
That's quite true. And I think
Because I don't need them to believe in my gods for me to be saved. But within Christianity, for example, they need everybody to believe before they are saved. Because the second coming won't come until the world believes. And there are conflicting, if you study Judaism, for instance, there's conflicting right-wing, how can I put it, groups in Israel. When I was trying to think of some on the spur of the tongue, and I'm not 100% sure I can, but if they come to me I'll mention them. And they are right-wing. They believe in the supremacy of Judaism, that the Messiah will come and lead them, and it will be, their promised land as they were promised. But one of these groups actively persecutes the Palestinian people. Every way they can,
because they don't.
Because they
conform,
believe.
they don't go
No.
down.
More to the idea of the fact that they believe that until Judaism occupies the land, historically, the land of Israel, then what they desire in Messiah won't happen. But the other group say, no, it doesn't work like that. Messiah won't come, until, if we make things happen, make this struggle happen, then the Messiah's going to come and sort it out. And so they actively help the Palestinians to do things.
Right.
But these are different viewpoints within different areas. Neither of them are wrong in what they say, but it's a case of doctrine and a belief being exactly the same, but split in how it works. In other words, they've got the same goal, but they believe in a different way to it. So I'm not using that and pointing that out to say that they're wrong.
Can't we see that in a lot of understandings and
Yes.
place today?
Well, of course we can.
Because that's why we're in so much conflict, and that's caused so much grief and conflict.
Well, yes. I mean, it's a case of things that are just exactly the same, but only slightly dissimilar. Within Islam, you have an idea, perhaps, of within Shia Islam, shall we say, there's an idea of different. The idea of the hidden imam comes in someone that's going to return. For some, this would be the seventh imam in a line that will return, and for others, it would be the 12th. And these are different sects, and they argue and they cause problems now because of the fact that they've got exactly the same mindset, but the belief that it's a slightly different thing. Now, this doesn't cause massive problems in everyday life. Nothing does. But doctrinally, there are always problems around religion. Now, this is not to say that the pagan faith, in other words, people that don't believe in monotheistic gods, someone that believes in the existence of more than one god, technically are pagans, more polytheists would be a better word, are all sweetness and light. They're not. Pagans generally are as touchy as shaved monkeys, the same as everybody else is about their own faith. And so everybody becomes concerned about their beliefs and whatever. They're not as, they don't try, the only difference is that they don't try and force them on other people. But I wasn't led towards paganism as an idea of rebelling against Christianity. I found my term with Christianity was the bedrock of how I went on further to learn. The Baha'i faith that I had contact with through my wife and met those, they were instrumental in my learning, because I realised in talking to the Baha'is how little I actually knew about anything. And it's hard to form an opinion if you don't know what you're talking about.
No, that's quite true. And we know that there are many people about that have lots and lots of opinion.
Yeah.
But that's life.
Of course.
I mean, that's the way it is. I do think that the more people have the knowledge, the better they can research and find out what resonates with them.
True. But they can, but as long as they accept the fact that what resonates with them today
Might not later.
might not resonate with them tomorrow.
That's quite true, yeah.
I found aspects of the Northern tradition. When I came into the Northern tradition, I was drawn to heathenry, which is an aspect of the Northern. There's more an Anglo-Saxon based form of this the religion that I follow, and I'm now earning more to a Northern tradition, like an older past, moving away from an Anglo-Saxon past. Now, technically, these are just droplets of water in the idea of the knowledge of what we do, because the religion is the same, but it's your understanding of it that changes in time. As long as you know that what you believe can change, and it can change dramatically, anything that you once or twice in my life I've had the eureka moment. You think, well, hang on a minute, if I believe this and that, then how can this be true? Oh, I believe that's true, but not if I believe this and this. So in other words, something is wrong somewhere. So I'm going to forget that, and I'm now going to believe this. This is your choice. It's your path.
It is, yeah.
It's what you need for the time. It's
Yeah.
whatever gets you through the day, really, in the idea of belief. Belief does help us, and the question you made earlier, belief does help us in our lives and go forward. It can give you a social and moral compass that otherwise would be dictated by your needs or greed or desires. And I think that society as a whole must have some moral compass, because
I agree.
other than that is chaos.
Yeah, well, sheer anarchy, really.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I quite agree. I quite agree with that. So, when we've touched on the subject here about how you came into this,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that the traditions that we have left behind resonate with a lot of people today,
Mm-hmm.
because of that was their, you touched on that as well, their needs that they needed at the time. The fertility, the growth of the crops, the whatever, they were all related to a god at that time. How do you feel about not encompassing them now, but putting it under one umbrella?
I'm not quite sure what you mean. The idea of my belief and theirs, or the idea of...
The idea of the belief that they are no longer needed, or they are no longer required.
Yeah, I'm not sure that holds in the way that people think it does. If you... Belief is something that... I'll give you an example, I'll show you what I mean, and see if you mean, is this what you're saying?
Yeah.
There's a book which I've read many times, in fact it's falling apart, it's called Religion and the Decline of Magic. It's quite a big thing. I read it for one of my courses I did. And it's basically the idea, and it helped me form the idea, although that wasn't in the book, that Europe was never really Christianised as we believe it. That it was still pagan. Because only our kings and masters were converted, and it was held by the church that everybody under them was therefore, if your king was Christian, your lord was Christian, you were then Christian. There's no attempt to teach them the tenets of the Christian faith. Why would there be? They were just peasants. So within that class system, and there are instances right through the book which I think are absolutely wonderful, where you have priests and bishops and that writing to the Pope complaining about, like the priests complaining about their parishioners, the bishops complaining about their priests. And in one case, they had in France, with a lot of things is French, women were cleaning the church, which the priest thought was wonderful, and they were sweeping the church meticulously. And he thought this was wonderful for several years, until he found out what they were doing with the dust they collected was using that dust to offerings to springs and fields, because they felt it was holy in some way, because it had come from the church, but they were using the holiness of the Christian faith to worship and give offerings to their pagan gods of their everyday life, who provided their food as far as they were concerned, their water, controlled their seasons. And so the interchange never goes. And so the idea of something being seen as redundant is an academic one. In people's true lives, it's what's meaningful for them that's important. You know, how they work their lives. The mere fact someone wants you to work your life in a different way, or to say to you that this is no longer relevant, you must now believe this. On the face of it, you can say, yes, I believe this, but you don't, because you were taught this. So.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, scenario, that is. And I do take that on board, and I'm sure our listeners will understand that as well. I just had a thing come in my mind, pop in my mind, that if we did that in today's society, and we put the trackings onto the fields, and we explained about this as the God that helps the crops come up, and we worship it through holy means, I wonder how it would be taken today. But there again, why shouldn't it be? Because we're all encompassed on everything.
Well, everything is. We hear old phrases and that from our past, from an agricultural past, and little tenets and, sort of, red sky at night and things like this. And I'm minded of something I heard years ago about a modern one would be, especially from an agricultural point of view. When the soil's manganese beryllium ratio bain't too great, spread the potassium trifosfates in isoacetate. And is this what we're going to be passing on to our children and our grandchildren and things like this? Because these things die out, and they have died out, the local traditions, and they're only now found in books and curiosities, and people are trying to revive them. But they're not reviving the thing itself, they're just reviving an echo of it. Not saying that's not valid, of course it is. What I'm trying to say through all the things I'm saying is that it really isn't the destination that's important. And I think if people just realise and say, look, I believe what I believe, as long as they don't believe, don't think that someone else should approve of their belief, it's theirs. No one can take it from them. They don't even have to tell anyone what they believe. No,
and I do. That resonates with me, and I do understand that. And that's why I love talking to people like yourselves and dear old Robin last week.
Yeah.
And great insights of the things that I'm sure that other people have gone down the road of researching and finding out from, an inquiring mind, if you like, and especially with me. Going down those roads here, and after all, that there's a word bandied about today of spirituality, and in the modern day terms, and you get no more spiritual than just sitting in the garden, because that's where the spirit is, if you like. But it goes right the way back to when the first person, if you believe the scenario of Adam and Eve walking on the land. That's where all the spirit is, around there.
Yeah, and it can be said that the whole of the planet is God's creation. Therefore, just being in it, you're worshipping. The idea of Dante, there's nothing more beautiful than the sky above you if you want to pray. And this is true. To a point. I mean, the definition of Paley's watch is the idea of the creation by God's the design argument. It's called within. In other words, look at the beauty all around you. This couldn't have happened just by accident. Therefore, it's proof. I mean, Paley's watch is, if you were to walk along and find a watch, it would prove the existence of a watchmaker. The watch can't have just happened. So they then transfer that to say that all of these things we see around us, the intricacies of the human eye, shall we speak, the fantastic things that happen to us in the first few hours of our conception, can't happen by accident, and therefore there's a divine force behind them. And this is where belief comes in.
Yeah, I don't really want to get into the
No.
roles of.
But I'm saying
is there a God?
No. It's not a case of that. Is there or isn't there a God? Because that actually comes down to the matter of belief. You could believe there's a God one day and not the next day, and then the following day believe there is again.
Yeah, okay. And then we have a lot going on in today's society whereby science comes into it and tries to understand and does prove otherwise. But that's a belief that you have, and rightly said, that people do have.
Well, they have. But then why is science divorced from religion? In Islam is fantastic for this. It never really was. And so if it hadn't have been for Islam, we wouldn't have had the Renaissance. We wouldn't have had this massive influx of information and knowledge about mathematics, about astrology and astronomy and all the deep things of life. If it hadn't have been for Islam having science and religion married as one, all of it came from God, where would the Western world have been? And so our way of saying this is secular and this is religious is part of the problem with today's society.
Yeah, I quite agree there.
To say that when these come together and say, look, there is or isn't a God, but does it matter? You know, we're not trying to prove the existence of God and disprove the existence of anything else. Let's just leave that out of the argument. And science is science and religion is religion, and you don't have to prove or disprove.
I don't really want to go down those roads of whereby we get to a situation why don't religious factions, and I include all, not just Christianity, doesn't acknowledge science, because then we go into different things of their beliefs and how they're controlling and all the rest, so we don't really want to go down there. But having said that, that's given tools for people to understand.
Well, yes, I mean, I some years ago I went to several creationist lectures, and I've got tapes and that from them and listened to what they had to say, and I understood a lot of it, which I was quite chuffed with, because a lot of them were scientists, and you know, they knew quite a bit about things, but they just had a slightly different worldview from everybody else. But who's to say they're right and they're wrong?
That's quite true.
And the answer is, who's to say?
That's
when
true.
you believe that no one can say what is right, and we're not going to find out for a long while, then everybody's right.
Yeah.
And
let me put a scenario to you. I can see in the next maybe 50, maybe sooner, but I say 50 or 60 years time, whereby there will be meeting houses for people who understand different ways of religion. They all come together in one place. Maybe that's just a pie in the sky, and I'm looking forward to that or wanting that to happen. What are your feelings on that?
Hand on my heart, I'd say no, that won't happen. Human nature tends to be dominant.
Yeah. I put human nature out of the way, and I put that, and I know I can't do that. That, as I said, it was pie in the sky, and maybe that's what I want to happen.
Yeah, and quite right.
What I'd like to happen.
Yeah, it's a nice idea, and any steps towards it are going to be add to the inclusivity of the human race, and anything that lessens diversity is a good thing. It isn't. For millions of years, people focus on the conflicts within religion and the conflicts that religious causes in society, has caused in society. But also, lessons are in the past of tolerance, where people have rubbed along for hundreds, if not thousands of years, different religions side by side, with no problems whatsoever. And all it needs is tolerance.
Well, yes, it does. And what we forget, I think, is religion, if it's not done anything, it's brought stability to us.
Well, it does. As I said, it does give a moral framework.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter which God you believe in.
No.
And, for instance, people argue. When I was with Southern Faith Resource, we organised several events and things like this, and there was a great show we put on at the Corn Exchange. We did it more than once, of different faiths in and around Ipswich and around Suffolk, of which there are many, would have a stall to say, look, this is what we believe. And we thought that would be a good way for people to come in that were interested in religion, or had the belief, but not so much sort of pick a religion, so to speak, but to show them what was in Suffolk, the diversity within Suffolk. And we were organising this for different faiths and in contact with different churches and different organisations. And I had no trouble, none whatsoever, with Muslim representatives. And they had a table, and they were quite happy to be only a table or so away from the Jewish stand that we had. Some Jews, there's not in Suffolk as such, the nearest synagogue's in Colchester, but they were quite happy. There was no trouble there. But I couldn't get the Methodists and the Catholics in the same room, let alone adjacent tables. There were so many factions within Christianity that all the different parts of it, it was a case where we can't put them near these or these near that, or these people wouldn't go if this person was here or that or whatever. And you think, well, these are people that all believe the same thing, ostensibly, but the slight difference within their sects makes them anathema to each other. As my example of the elder of my church, and his opinion on this, and this is dogma. Dogma is what man creates, it isn't what God's create. People come to a religion, you have a stage where the prophet, whoever he is, be it Jesus, be it Muhammad, be it any other prophet of God, generally monotheistic religions, Baha'u'llah if you're Baha'i, and they come to people with a message, and in that euphoria of that message, people believe because they're in contact with someone that they have seen is different, other in some way, history. And so you have that initial fire that builds a base. And people come into contact with that, are converted. It's just the way of the world. But then when that prophet passes, when that goes away, you have another thing where people that knew the prophet are still there. And so that belief carries forward. This is just not Christianity, this is every faith.
Yeah.
Then you get to a point where the businessmen take over, where men, and it is always men, take over a religion. They reduce the power of women, they reduce the power of people that don't believe, they increase their own power and create the dogma that surrounds the faith.
Yeah, we've seen that all
And this, you could say that in all faiths. Why men feel that they should do this, I've got no idea. But this is what happens within all faiths. And the older the faith, the longer it's been going on for. And so you then have historical reference. Well, we've believed this for so many years, therefore it must be true. I'm not trying to say these things aren't, because I've already said, I accept everybody's and everybody's belief. Whatever you believe is perfectly okay with me. It's not my path, it's yours.
That's quite true, yeah.
And so therein is the idea of different faiths coming together and worshipping in one place. It would be a brilliant idea. It's an idea of mine to have a place where people can go and meet other people and just be. Because just as someone's sexuality is not important, why would their religion be?
That's quite true.
If you go to someone and say, you don't say, excuse me, and your sexuality is, well, that's only relevant if you want to have sex with them, I think. Why would you need to know somebody's religion? Why would you need to tell somebody yours?
That's right, yeah.
These things are deeply personal. You don't need to know, I don't think, someone's religion. But then you end up with the idea of someone, certainly with some faiths, and I've had this said to me, that you can't actually mix with people because they are a different faith. They believe this, so even contact with them pollutes you in some way. When I left my fellowship and I was going to pagan meetings and moots and things like this, I was quite open when people asked me what I was doing. I was in a local shop, bakers, and there was a woman from the fellowship I'd been in the shop, in the queue in front of me. She became aware that I was in the queue behind her, and she was that terrified of being polluted by my presence, she ran out of the shop. Because of the fact that I was now a devil worshipper, in her eyes,
Yeah.
would have somehow contaminated her. Now, that's her belief, and I didn't comment on it at the time, other than the fact it got me nearer to the front of the queue. And I thought, perhaps it's just the effect I have on all women. I mean, it has happened in the past, so it could well be, but I would not have done that the other way round. And
No.
so that doesn't make me better than her.
No,
it just makes me different.
Different, yeah.
But it shows the level to some people do where they think that they can't be in contact with someone of another faith. And so to get everybody together will work, but it'll only work for people that are like-minded
Yeah.
and tolerant in the first place.
I think that tolerance is the word to start with,
Yeah.
and being open-minded is another one. And that's, I'm very aware that time is running out, but being open-minded is just a word that a lot of people give lip service to, and nothing else. And your scenario about the lady in the queue, I have been told, why do you bother to come into this gathering if you do not believe? And my question, and my answer to that was, well, it's not a case of not believing. I just feel that I have, because I've looked into it a bit more, I can see where things have been adapted from certain places and come down, and I don't feel that I could do this. No. So it's loggerheads, and it's a situation that we go back right to the beginning. There is dogma and control and dictation, and there'll always be, why, as you say, men, and I will put women in front of there just as much today, because we are talking about, my dad would say pounds, shillings and pence, and we'd just put it under the umbrella of businessmen, are in control and dominating, and we're into the situation with bums on seats, if we like.
Yeah, but by the same token, to have bums on seats, people have got to be relative. You don't, for instance, I enjoy rock music. I don't go to concerts now because my hearing's so bad that it distorts, and I didn't used to go to many in the first place. But just because I go to something doesn't make me a heavy metal fan or a rock fan. It just means I like it. Going to McDonald's doesn't make you a beef burger.
No, that's quite true.
And you don't have to be a beef burger to go there. And it may well be that you only fancy McDonald's once a year, or other fast food outlets are available, I expect. But you don't have to do it. Just because you go there once doesn't mean that that's that person you are. And I am exclusive in some ways, but religiously I will go and do go to many different churches, and different rituals of other faiths within paganism. Doesn't make me those people. It just means the fact that I like to learn, I like to see, and tolerance is all. And if you understand about your neighbour, how can you hurt him?
That's right, yeah. And I quite agree. Tolerance is the word that we need to embrace more, rather than saying we are open to everything. We need to be a bit more tolerant and understanding. And we will always get in this world those through want of a different word, ego is there and wants to inflate themselves. We're always going to get that, no matter what the situation is. But it'd be nice if they would be tolerant to us like we're tolerant to them.
Yeah, I understand that. But the thing is that the dismay within religion comes from expecting this from people.
Probably, yeah.
I've had a lifetime of being disappointed, and people will probably tell me they've had a lifetime of being disappointed by me, by my actions. I know I'm no saint. I am no saint.
Yeah, join the club.
And so I've hurt a lot of people in my life, no doubt. But I try not to. I don't go out of my way to. People have expectations of you that you can't always fulfil. But all you can be to people is a friend, and I think that just being yourself in all things because everybody else is taken at the end of the day. You might as well be yourself.
Yeah, I do.
Believe what you
I
wish.
just feel that maybe that when you go through the doors of any establishment, they should respect that what you think and what resonates with you, rather than, or they might as well put a sign over the door and say, if you come in here, you are going to be controlled by the beliefs of us. And I just think it's a shame, really.
One, the thing is though, are they necessarily doing that? But even if they are, I'm not quite sure how it impacts your belief. And this is because if you hold yourself to yourself,
my beliefs are my beliefs to me, that's fine.
Yeah,
It's
but
to
then-
other people
agreed,
who say.
but agreed. But if someone says, "Why do you come here?" you just say, "Well, because I want to."
I
And I was just on the tip of my tongue to give an adage that I usually say, but I won't do it on air because it could be construed as being quite rude. But it's the fact is, if something suits you, then does it really matter what someone else thinks of it?
It doesn't matter.
And
what
it never
they-
worries me. I understand what you mean, and I've had similar accusations levelled at me in the past through different places and different churches and different places that I've been to. Why are you doing this because you don't believe that, and why are you doing this because you don't believe this? And I say that I do this because I'm here doing it. I don't have a problem with it. Any problem you have with it is obviously your problem. It never worries me. I never think about it because at the end of the day, if I want to do something, I'll do it.
Yeah. And on that note, I'll say it has been an absolute pleasure
Thank you.
to talk with you, and we must do it again, not on air, maybe, but do it again and talk again,
What you are.
because it's been a pleasure. And thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you.